Uh, Good morning, everyone. So as Lina said, my name is Filipe Neves. I currently act as the CFO for F6S. Um, so I'll be talking a little bit. This is the first of two sessions that I was asked by Lina to coordinate. This initial one, I will give an overview about why I feel that building a business plan is potentially the first step to understand how and if we should exploit a new business or a new product inside an existing business. Okay, but before I get into that, and if my computer, so this is going to be more or less the the theme that I'm going to talk about. And basically, the first chapter I called it the power of strategic planning. What is a bit? Then I will talk about what is a business plan, why business plans matter, some essential components of the business plan, how investors look at business plans, and then a few more practical tips on how to write strong business plans, some examples of tools that people can use, and a small conclusion, and then there's going to be space for Q&A, of course. Okay, but before getting into, oh Jesus, before getting into the the presentation itself, just give um, a little bit of background about myself. So I started my career about actually now 21 years ago. I've worked for 9 years in a tech-based business incubator promoted by the University of Coimbra. During that tenure, I helped people build and participated in more than 200 business plans, more than 100 applications to grants, which also include financial projections, etc. Um, then I moved into more of a corporate finance role, where I worked for one company that today is actually a unicorn. So I participated in 10 financing rounds between of different kinds, equity, venture debt, and other types of debt and bank debt. Um, where the companies that I've worked for raised more than 150 million US dollars. And I've also participated in more than 20 additional applications for grants that basically help those companies secure more than 25 million euros in funding. Okay, so all of those things basically they all include, of course, business plans and financial projections, etc. Right? I've mentored in a different range of accelerator programs, and I was actually also in the university teaching um, business planning and entrepreneurship to software engineers, master students. Okay, so in a nutshell, this is my professional background, um, and in the well, I believe the main reason why actually Lena asked me to talk to you a little bit about these thematics in these two sessions, the first today and another one in about a month. Um, so getting into the training itself. So let's start with a real life case that I believe everyone heard about, right? So Does anyone know when Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak actually built their first Apple's business plan? Um, how long it was? So how big in terms of number of pages? How many chapters and how big each chapter was, and how much money they raised. Or, for example, when they built their second business plan, the first for a specific a specific uh, product or project that they had internally in Apple. So the answer to the first question is actually Steve Jobs built their first business plan in 1977. Oops. It was 197 pages long. Well, but don't be scared. Only 38 pages if we take all of the appendixes that they put into it. Okay. Um, it had basically 8 chapters, with the biggest one being what they call the market, with around 11 pages. Okay. And with that, they basically raise $250,000. So that was their first round, their first investment round from a business angel called Mike Markula. Okay. Um, their second business plan was built 4 years later, when they pitched the the first version of what we know today as the Mac PC, Macintosh. Um, and this is some pictures of parts of that business plan, right? They had a little bit of on if you see there on the left hand side, they had market analysis, they had a technology or a product description, and then they had also an org chart, so they had financial projections, all of that. Okay, so this is just a funny fact to make everyone understand that business plan is not a new thing, right? It's been around at least for 50 years. Okay, if we and even very successful companies, in the beginning they build business plans, and they build business plans all across their business history. Okay, so what is this business plan? Let's put it in a formal way, right? It's a formal definition, right? Written document outlining a company's objectives, strategies, and financial forecasts. It serves as a roadmap for business growth and development. Okay, so this is a very, very formal definition. Okay, so and why do they matter, right? So for startups, a business plan is crucial for launching a new venture or attracting investors, right? Most of the startups, they use their business plans to basically raise capital or present their idea to potential partners, to even banks sometimes, etc. Right? For established businesses, it helps them keep the executive team focused, not only on short but also on long-term objectives. Right? Again, let's not forget the definition. The business plan is a roadmap, right? So as a roadmap, it helps track how good or bad a business is performing compared to its objectives and to its mission. Okay. And I've already mentioned the final one, which is of course it's a roadmap, right? So it's something that businesses use to track, as I said, performance against objectives, against the market, against competitors, etc. Okay. So, how does a business plan help businesses? It helps define their goals, clarifies what the business aims are, and how it can be achieved, or they can be achieved. It's a guide for decision making, so it basically provides the framework for making informed decisions, not only on operations but also in marketing, finances, sales, even product product development, etc. Right? It helps to attract investors or lenders. A business plan that is very well structured can demonstrate the viability or not. By the way, it's also important sometimes to understand if the businesses if the business that we're trying to develop or to launch will be viable, and if it's not viable, understand that potentially we should not launch it. One of my mentors back in the day had a mantra that says it's as important the business and that we help support. So in the business incubator. Just to give you an idea on the business incubator and the reason why I've helped a lot of companies, more than 200, build their business plans. It's because the business plan was actually the application form to the business incubator, right? And only after uh, um, founders team built and endured on building a business plan with roughly 25, 30 pages, um, and demonstrate that the business that they were foreseeing to launch was capable of generating and of being sustainable and being viable from a financial standpoint. Only then they were allowed to actually join the business incubator. And the mantra was, well, it's as important to create successful and sustainable businesses as to prevent businesses that don't have any viability from a market or a business or a financial standpoint to actually be created, and to direct the resources and the brains of the people of the founding teams to businesses that can actually be successful and viable from a financial standpoint. Okay, so that's why it's very important. That's why we use the business plan as the and even today that business incubator uses a business plan as the application to join and to be incubated in that incubator. Um, so of course, after building and, for example, after raising capital and securing capital from an investor, for example, the business plan will serve as the as a way to monitor the performance. It sometimes reaching some milestones that are in the business plan will determine the disbursement of additional capital from the investors. I've seen it happen a lot of times. Um, so it's basically the roadmap and to the document or the 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 path that also serves as the benchmark to the actual performance of the business. Um, and then it also contributes to help um, to understand where the business can be better, and also to support as a support to decision making. So, what are the main components of a business plan? So, a business plan starts particular immediately with an executive summary. The executive summary, it's basically the one of the main components of a business plan. It serves as the brief overview of the business. It's the one that typically investors read and to determine if they want to know more. Even if you're building a business plan, an internal business plan for a product, a certain department of the company is building a business plan for a product that they or a service that they want to launch, uh, and they are presenting it to the board, for example. It's going to be what management will read to understand if it's something that they will like to pursue or not. It should be short. I have an American expression there, short and sweet, maximum 1-2 pages, and should end with what the basically the business plan was built for. Was built to raise capital. So are we asking for money? Are we asking for additional resources? For example, if we're talking about a department that wants to build a new product, as I said, do we need additional human resources, a new machine, or something like that? Or are we asking for advisory? Because it can also be used by a business, for example, to build an advisory board, right? And people will want to understand the business, and they can be, and the founding team or the board can, the board of directors can, for example, give the business plan to the potential advisors. So the the next chapter, or the first big chapter, is basically a company description. It basically describes what the company's mission and objectives is. It gives a rundown on the company history, the company legal structure, particularly when we're talking about established businesses and not startups that have, for example, like different different companies inside the group. Um, and then it also introduces the company management team and organizational structure, which can also be a separate, uh, in some situations, this last bullet point is presented in a different chapter, or an individual chapter. But basically, in here, we basically introduce the management team CVs and main skills, some of the key staff members, if not part of, if they exist and are not part of the management team. Um, and as I said, in some situation, this comes as a separate chapter of the business plan. The next chapter is basically market analysis. So by definition of the target market, type of client, geographical reach, market size, total addressable market, serviceable available market, or say serviceable obtainable market. It gives a rundown on macroeconomic trends, industry trends, competitive landscape, and the analysis also to the competitors, and how the company basically compares to its competitors. Okay. Um, there's also should be basically a chapter where products and services are described, so main features and capabilities, the benefits and competitive advantages. This is where we also talk about IP protection. So what kind of protections does the product have or can have? Then there's a product development roadmap, how it happened in the last 2 to 3 years, 1 to 2 years, and how it's going to happen in the following 1 to 3 years, and also an R&D roadmap, which is basically what's the dream, in 3 to 5 years, how can we be, how the company will be and how the product will be in 3 to 5 years. So um, I just said it's the dream. So let's not, when um, a founding team is trying to build a startup or launch a startup, sometimes it's a life dream, right? Sometimes it's by need and it's something that happens because, well, there's no other choice, but sometimes it's a life dream. And if we're trying to raise capital from an investor, for example, what we're trying to do is sell our dream to that investor, and for that investor to understand our dream. And this is where, um, and in the business plan, that dream needs to be described. And in early stages, people are the investors are basically either betting on the team or betting on the product and on the technology. Okay, so this is um, an important chapter, but and it's sometimes for most of the founding teams that have a technical background, it's where they give or they put most of their efforts on. But of course, product needs to be the product needs to be sold. So the next chapter is the marketing and sales strategy, and particularly product market fit. And it's one very important thing um, that needs to be very, very well explained in a business plan, particularly when we're talking about raising capital, right? Um, Product marketing mix, and also how the product will be sold. How will the company reach and acquire customers? What kind of sales and marketing workforce will be necessary? Inside sales, hunters, closers, what kind of communication means will be used to reach the potential clients? What kind of advertising will be used? Will it be social media, television, etc.? And what kind of investment it will imply also? Describe, of course, distribution channels. Will it be direct to consumer? Will it be through brick and mortar? And it will always depend on the kind of product and service that we're talking about. And um, and also building a SWOT analysis is sometimes it's relevant. So we described a little bit of the history and the mission. We described the team. We described the product. We described the market. We described how we're going to sell, but then we're going to have to also operationalize and tell, particularly an investor, how actually we're going to put all of this in practice, right? So this operational plan is typically more relevant for an industrial commercial business, um, but it can also help a service business. It describes how the distribution logistics will work, how post sales will also work, and how HR and other company policies will be designed and implemented and monitored. Okay, so how we actually going to be operating on a daily basis to put in practice all of our dream. Then it comes the financial projections. So basically, uh, financial statements that include income statement, cash flow statement, and balance sheet. So if the company already has some history, it should present at least the last 3 years of historical financials, and then we should build projected financials for on a monthly basis for the first 12 to 24 months of the business plan uh, period, and on a quarterly basis for the remaining of the 5 years, at least 5 years of projections. Sometimes, depending on the business, for example, if we're talking about biotech, 5 years, it's not enough. Could we should build a little bit more, but never more than 10 years. I I used to say that um, 12 months, it's something that we can more or less understand how it's going to happen. 24 months, it's already a stretch. After all of that is futurology. No one knows. I've seen cases where companies basically blew their business plan, their financial projections in the first 6 months. I've seen cases where they never reached the goals even 5 years down the line. Um, let's not forget again, and reminding some of the things that I said in the beginning, the business plan is just a roadmap, and it defines guidelines for the operation, and everyone knows that it's something that it's never going to happen exactly how it's described, because reality will always supersede what we think it's going to happen, right? Um, the financial projections should always be justified with defensible assumptions. So independently of the probability of things happening or not, um, the rest of the business plan should serve as basically the basis for the financial projections and the justifications for what we think it's going to be sales costs, etc. Right? It should include the financing and investment plan with capital needs. Um, basically, if you're raising capital, um, we should include the calculation of the company valuation. And also be aware that, as I said, business plans are business plans, and investors typically discount the projections by 30 to 50% when they're building their own business plan and financial models, and trying to determine the company valuation to put, for example, to put forward, for example, a term sheet. Okay. By the way, on the right-hand side there, it's basically a picture of part of the financial projections and justifications of the Mac business plan. So how do investors look at the business plan? What they look for? Basically, an investor, when they're investing on a company, they want the return on investment, right? So they analyze a business plan from the perspective of how fast they can multiply their money by a factor of 2 to 20 times, depending on the stage of the company, right? So the 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 earlier stage the companies, the more let's say the highest return the the investor will be looking for in terms of percentage or multiplier. Okay. Um, they will be looking for what's the potential of the market. So what's the market potential for the business that's being pitched to them, right? How big is the market? How scalable is the business? What is the minimum market share to have a successful business? So one thing very, very important is no one will believe that a business can be successful, for example, if it, for example, needs to have a 90% market share to be just to be viable and to be break even, right? So um, that's no one's gonna give money to such kind of business because it's very very unlikely in today's world that someone will have 90% of the business unless it's basically a legal monopoly given by a government. Okay, and those kinds of businesses are not investable by a VC, for example. Um, Management team competence. What's the background of the founding team? What's the mix of competencies? Are they all technical? Do they have management background or financial background or sales background, etc. And by the way, why is this important? Because this will also determine, for example, post investment, how much the it's gonna be will have to be invested from the money raised to build the management team, to build up the management team, and to understand what are the holes that need to be filled in. And they also use a business plan to do some risk assessment and risk analysis, right? So it's also the business plan is it's typically the first document that investors use to do their due diligence, right? And it's the first thing that it's discussed with the founding team or with the management team of a company, even before a term sheet is even considered or is put forward. So risk assessment and risk evaluation are very, very tight. And of course, it's the basis for basically the financial models that the investor will build on themselves. So if any of you are right now on and or have experience on this, you might know that no one, as I said, no one believes on no investor will build or give money to a company or to a founding team without having their analysts build their own financial models and basically discussing and putting in check or arguing about what the different assumptions and projections that the founding team or the business team put on their business plan. So after all this, it's also the basis for the valuation that they will offer. It's gonna be part of the info pack that the investment team will put to the investment committee, and that's it. So for all of this, the most important chapters of a business plan for an investor are the executive summary, which is the first impression, the market analysis, which for them to understand the size of the opportunity, the financial projections, and in certain stages of the business, of course, the introduction of the management and founding team. Because in some situations, in very early stages, as I already said, um, sometimes the investor is betting on the technology, betting on the people, betting on the founding team, particularly when we're talking about pre-revenue businesses where there's no other base for valuation. Sometimes it's just a gut feeling, and based on if there's a click between the investor and the management team. Um, I'm I usually say that um, an investment or a capital raise process is like dating, right? So you either you click or you don't click. And don't forget that you're gonna be bringing in a partner to your business, and it's actually harder to get rid of that partner than get rid of a of another type of partner. If you it's actually more difficult to take a partner out of a company than taking a partner out of a marriage. Okay. And again, as I said, also the product and IP might also be important. It's what we typically call betting on a tech. I don't know, before getting into the last few chapters, I don't know if someone has any question at the moment. So, just some very, very fast tips or short tips on how to write a strong business plan. Keep it concise and clear. Use data and research to support your claims. Focus on on your target audience, and what are their needs and their focus. Be realistic and objective. Have someone else review it. Another pair of eyes is never enough. uh, Keep on updating it. So even if you're successful, for example, raising capital or getting more resources to a product develop to a new idea of a product, it's also it's very, very important to also always question what you build on your initial plan. Um, So this will be on the presentation. You can check these links. One th I Most of the times before actually building a business plan, because well, it's a very lengthy process, and it's a big document. Even if you refrain yourself or contain it within the 30-40 page document. I typically start building a canvas by building a canvas to understand if there's the need to move forward with a more comprehensive business plan. Just in as a conclusion, business planning is a continuous process. It's not just about creating the document. It's also about regular reviewing it and updating the plan to reflect the changes in the context and in the market. Reality will always supersede, so it's always important to adjust the plan and adjust the path to what reality throws at you. Okay, so this is the end of my presentation. Now open for questions if anyone has any.
Thank you, Philippe. So I will stop the recording now.